because Dean Martin heard a couple had no money. He crashed their wedding. What happened next is magic. The struggling sweethearts. The summer of 1965 was sweltering in Los Angeles, and for 23-year-old Angela Romano, the heat was the least of her worries. She sat at the small Formica table in her studio apartment in Echo Park, surrounded by wedding magazines she couldn't afford, and a calculator that kept delivering the same devastating news. She and her fiancé Tommy Chen didn't have nearly enough money for the wedding they'd been dreaming about. Angela had met Tommy 2 years earlier at the garment factory where they both worked. She as a seamstress, he in the shipping department. Tommy was the son of Chinese immigrants who ran a small laundry on Broadway, while Angela's family had come from Sicily 3 generations back, settling in the tight-knit Italian community of East LA. Their love story had been the kind that made their friends sigh with envy. Instant connection, shared dreams, and a devotion that seemed to make the world brighter. But love, as Angela was learning, didn't pay for wedding venues or catering or flowers. "We could just go to City Hall," Tommy suggested gently. Looking over her shoulder at the numbers, he wrapped his arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. "I don't need a big wedding, Angie. I just need you." Angela leaned back into his embrace, tears threatening to spill. "I know, and I'd marry you anywhere. But my mama, she's been dreaming of this since I was born. She wants to see me walk down the aisle in a real church, with flowers and music, and all our families there. After everything she's sacrificed for me, I just wanted to give her that." Tommy squeezed her tighter. "Then we'll figure it out. Maybe we can save for another year. We've already postponed twice." Angela interrupted, her voice breaking. "People are starting to think we're never going to do it. And honestly, I don't want to wait anymore. I want to be your wife, Tommy. I want to start our life together." What they had managed to scrape together was modest but heartfelt. They'd booked the small community center attached to Our Lady of Guadalupe Church for a Saturday afternoon in September. Angela's mother, Rosa, had agreed to make the wedding dress a simple design but sewn with love. Tommy's mother had offered to prepare some of the food, traditional Chinese dishes that would sit alongside the Italian specialties. Rosa insisted on making. Their friend Marco, who played guitar at local clubs, had agreed to provide music for free. It would be small, intimate, and nothing like the grand celebrations their friends had enjoyed, but it would be theirs. The real problem was the reception. The community center was free, but they needed tables, chairs, decorations, and enough food to feed the 80 guests they'd invited, a number that had already been painfully whittled down the original list. Every time Angela ran the numbers, they came up at least $500 short, and that was with everyone doing favors and cutting corners. $500 might as well have been $5,000. Working at the factory, Angela made $65 a week. Tommy made $7. After rent, food, and helping their families, there was barely anything left to save. "I have an idea," Tommy said suddenly, pulling away to look at her. "What if we asked people to help instead of giving gifts? Like maybe some people could bring a dish, or help with decoration. We could make it a real community thing." Angela considered this. It wasn't traditional, but then again, nothing about their wedding was going to be traditional. "You think people would be okay with that? Are you kidding? Everyone loves you, Angie, and they love us together. I bet half the neighborhood would jump at the chance to help." Over the next few weeks, they put out the word. The response was overwhelming. Mrs. Kowalski from downstairs offered to make her famous pirogue. The Hernandez family said they'd handle the decorations, paper, flowers, and streamers. Nothing fancy, but made with care. Father Murphy at the church said he'd waive his usual fee for performing the ceremony. Slowly, piece by piece, their impossible wedding was becoming possible. But Angela still worried. She wanted everything to be perfect, not just for herself but for Tommy, for their families, for everyone who was working so hard to make this day special. She lay awake at night, mentally reviewing every detail, terrified that something would go wrong. 3 weeks before the wedding, Angela's friend Diane invited her to lunch at a diner on Sunset Boulevard. Diane worked as a waitress at the famous Villa Capri restaurant, where Hollywood stars and industry executives came to eat and be seen. She always had stories about celebrity encounters, Sinatra leaving a $100 tip, Marilyn Monroe crying in the bathroom, Rock Hudson making everyone laugh with his jokes. "You'll never believe what happened last night," Diane said as they slid into a booth. Dean Martin came in and he was in the best mood, singing, joking with everyone, buying drinks for the whole restaurant. "You know how he is, just the sweetest, most generous guy." Angela smiled. She'd grown up watching Dean Martin on TV, listening to his records with her parents. There was something about him, that easy charm, that warmth, that made you feel like he was singing just for you. "Anyway," Diane continued, "he was talking to Tony, you know, the owner, and I overheard him saying something about how he loves hearing about regular people's lives. He said Hollywood can be so fake, and he misses hearing real stories about real people." Angela nodded, only half listening as she studied the menu, calculating what she could afford. "So I told him about you," Diane said casually. Angela's head snapped up. I told him about you and Tommy, about how you're getting married next month and how you've been working so hard to put together this wedding on basically no money, and how the whole neighborhood is pitching in to help." He seemed really interested, Angie. He kept asking questions, where you worked, how you met Tommy, all of it. "Diane." Angela felt her face flush with embarrassment. "Why would you tell Dean Martin about my life? He doesn't care about some factory worker's wedding." "That's where you're wrong," Diane said, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "He cared a lot. In fact, he asked me to give you something." She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card with a phone number written on the back in neat handwriting. "He said if you needed anything at all for the wedding, you should call this number. He said he'd like to help." Angela stared at the card as if it might bite her. "This is a joke, right? Dean Martin doesn't just offer to help random people with their wedding. I'm telling you, he was serious. He even made me promise I'd give you the card. He said." Diane paused, remembering. "He said that love is the most important thing in the world, and if he could do something to help two people start their life together, it would make him happy." Angela took the card with trembling hands. The number was written in blue ink, slightly smudged. It looked real, but the whole thing seemed impossible. "I can't call Dean Martin," she said firmly, handing the card back. "It's too much. We'll be fine with what we have." Diane pushed the card back across the table. "Just keep it. You don't have to call, but if you change your mind, well, miracles do happen, Angie, especially in this town." That night, Angela showed Tommy the card. They sat on their small balcony, looking out over the lights of Los Angeles, and debated what to do. "It feels wrong," Angela said, "like we'd be taking advantage of his kindness." "Or maybe," Tommy said thoughtfully, "it's exactly what Diane said. A miracle. Maybe some people in this world just want to help, and we should let them." Angela tucked the card into her wallet, where it stayed for the next 2 weeks, a secret possibility she couldn't quite bring herself to act on. She was too proud, too independent, too afraid of But fate, as it turned out, had other plans. You won't believe what Dean Martin did next. If you're already hooked on this incredible true story, hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens in the next chapter. It was a Tuesday afternoon, 10 days before the wedding, when everything fell apart. Angela was at work, carefully stitching the hem of a dress, when her supervisor called her into the office. The factory had lost a major contract, and they were laying off 20 workers. Angela was one of them. She'd have 2 weeks' pay as severance, and then nothing. She walked out of the factory in a daze, her final paycheck clutched in her hand. 2 weeks' pay wouldn't even cover next month's rent, let alone contribute to the wedding. She sat on the bus home, staring out the window, trying not to cry in front of the other passengers. When she got home, she found Tommy already there, sitting at the kitchen table with his head in his hands. He looked up when she entered, and she knew immediately that something was wrong. "My father had a stroke," he said quietly. "He's in the hospital. He's going to be okay, but Angie, the medical bills. My mother can't run the laundry by herself. I'm going to have to help them, probably for months. All our savings, everything we put aside for the wedding, it has to go to them." Angela sat down beside him, and they held each other in silence. She didn't cry. She was too numb for tears. "We should postpone," Tommy said finally. "It's not the right time. With you losing your job, and my father." "No," Angela said firmly. "No more postponing. We've waited long enough, and I'm not waiting anymore. We'll figure it out." But that night, alone in the bathroom while Tommy slept, Angela finally let herself cry. She cried for the wedding that was slipping away, for the stress and the fear and the unfairness of it all. She cried because she was tired of being strong, tired of pretending everything would work out. When she finally stopped crying, she washed her face and looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were red and swollen, but there was something else there too, a determination that surprised her. She went to her purse and pulled out the business card Diane had given her. She stared at the phone number for a long time. It was crazy, it was presumptuous, it was probably a prank or a misunderstanding. But what did she have to lose? The next morning, after Tommy left to be with his family at the hospital, Angela picked up the phone. Her hands shook as she dialed the number. It rang 3 times, and she was about to hang up when someone answered. Hello? The voice was male, professional, not Dean Martin. Hi, my name is Angela Romano. I was given this number by, someone told me that. This is going to sound crazy, but Angela Romano, the voice interrupted, suddenly warm. Yes, we've been expecting your call. Martin asked me to watch for it. Please hold. Angela's heart hammered in her chest. This was real. This was actually happening. There was a click and then a different voice came on the line, smooth, warm, unmistakably Dean Martin. Angela, I was hoping you'd call. Diane told me all about you and your young man. Congratulations on the wedding. Angela couldn't speak. She was talking to Dean Martin. Dean Martin was congratulating her on her wedding. Hello? You still there, sweetheart? Yes. Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Martin. I can't believe I'm talking to you. His laugh was warm and genuine. Please, call me Dean. And listen, Diane told me you 2 kids are putting together a wedding on a shoestring, and the whole neighborhood is pitching in. That's beautiful, Angela. That's what life's supposed to be about. People helping people, love bringing folks together. It's very kind of you to say so, Angela managed. But Mr. Dean, I don't want you to think I'm calling to ask for anything. I just wanted to thank you for the offer. But we're going to be fine. Angela, he interrupted gently. Diane also told me you just lost your job, and your fiancé's father is in the hospital. Now, I don't know what your definition of fine is, but it sounds to me like you could use a little help. Tears sprang to Angela's eyes. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Just tell me if you could have anything for your wedding. Anything at all, what would it be? Angela thought about all the things she'd dreamed of and given up on. I just want it to be special, she said softly. I want Tommy to feel like a king for a day, and I want our families to have a beautiful memory. I want music and dancing, and enough food that nobody goes hungry. I want it to feel like magic. There was a pause on the other end of the line. When Dean spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. You know what, Angela? I think I can help with that. Now, I need you to trust me, okay? Don't ask too many questions, just trust me. Can you do that? Yes? Good. Now this wedding is on September 18th at Our Lady of Guadalupe, right? And the reception is at the community center. Yes, but how did you? Diane's very thorough, he said with a chuckle. Okay, here's what's going to happen. You're going to plan your wedding exactly as you were planning it. Don't change anything. Don't worry about anything. Just show up on your wedding day, and I promise you it's going to be magical. Deal? Dean, I can't let you pay for it. You're not letting me do anything, he said firmly but kindly. I'm doing this because I want to, because you remind me of my own parents, immigrants who worked hard, loved each other and never had much money but had everything that mattered. Let me do this, Angela. Let me give you the wedding you deserve. Angela was crying now, unable to hold it back. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you so much. No tears now, Dean said gently. Save those for the wedding day. And Angela, one more thing. Don't tell anyone about this call. Not Tommy, not your family, nobody. I want this to be a surprise. Can you keep a secret? Yes, Angela said, laughing through her tears. I can keep a secret. That's my girl. I'll see you on September. The line went dead, and Angela sat holding the phone, wondering if she'd just imagined the entire conversation, but the dial tone was real, and the hope blooming in her chest was real, and for the first time in weeks, she felt like maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. Over the next 10 days, Angela kept her promise. She didn't tell Tommy about the phone call, though it nearly killed her to keep such a big secret. She went through the motions of wedding planning, accepting help from neighbors, making lists, and trying not to worry about all the things they couldn't afford. Tommy found a new job working construction, which paid better than the factory but meant long hours and physical exhaustion. Angela picked up work doing alterations for a local tailor. They were surviving, but barely. 3 days before the wedding, a delivery truck arrived at the community center. The driver asked for Father Murphy, and unloaded box after box of decorations, real flowers, not paper ones. Roses, lilies, orchids, more flowers than Angela had ever seen in one place. There were linens for the tables, real china plates, crystal glasses, and silverware. Father Murphy called Angela immediately. "Did you order all this?" "No," Angela said, her heart raced. "I have no idea where it came from." But she did know. Dean Martin was keeping his promise. The next day, a catering company showed up with a contract for a full Italian-Chinese fusion feast. Enough food for 200 people, not just the 80 they'd invited. The chef explained that everything had been paid for in advance, and that they'd be serving family style with waiters and everything. Angela's mother was beside herself. "Angela Maria Romano, what is going on? Where is this coming from?" "I don't know, Mama," Angela lied, feeling guilty but also giddy with excitement. "Maybe it's a miracle." Rosa crossed herself. "Santa Maria, maybe it is." On the morning of the wedding, Angela woke up feeling like she was floating. She still didn't know exactly what Dean Martin had planned, but she trusted him. She put on the dress her mother had made, simple white satin with lace sleeves, and looked at herself in the mirror. She looked like a bride. She felt like a princess. At the church, Tommy waited at the altar in a borrowed suit, his eyes shining with love and anticipation. The pews were filled with everyone they loved, family, friends, neighbors, all dressed in their Sunday best. And then just as the ceremony was about to begin, a sleek black car pulled up outside the church. Dean Martin stepped out, wearing an impeccable suit and his trademark smile. He had come to crash their wedding, and the magic was just beginning. Can you believe this is really happening? Like this video right now if you're as emotional as I am, and stick around. The next chapter is where things get absolutely incredible. Father Murphy was the first to notice. He was standing at the altar, prayer book in hand, when he glanced toward the back of the church and froze mid-sentence. His eyes widened, and a smile spread across his usually solemn face. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice filled with wonder, "I believe we have a very special guest." Every head in the church turned toward the entrance. There, silhouetted in the doorway with the morning sun behind him, stood Dean Martin. The church erupted. People gasped, screamed, jumped to their feet. Angela's Aunt Francesca fainted and had to be fanned by her daughters. Tommy's mother grabbed her husband's arm so hard he yelled. Children pointed and shouted. It was pandemonium. Dean walked down the aisle with that easy, confident stride that had made him famous, waving and smiling at the shocked guests. He was carrying a guitar case in one hand and a bottle of champagne in the other. When he reached the front of the church, he turned to address the crowd. "I hope you don't mind me crashing this party," he said, his voice carrying easily through the space. "But when I heard about two young people in love who were putting together a wedding with nothing but hope and help from their community, well, I just had to be here." Angela stood frozen in the back of the church, her arm linked through her father's, tears streaming down her face. This was Dean Martin was at her wedding. Tommy looked like he might pass out. He gripped the altar rail for support, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Dean turned to Father Murphy. "Father, would you mind if I sang a little something before the ceremony? I promise to keep it whole." Father Murphy, who had clearly abandoned all pretense of maintaining order, just nodded enthusiastically. Dean opened the guitar case, and pulled out a beautiful acoustic guitar. He settled onto a stool that someone rushed to provide, adjusted the microphone that Marco frantically set up and began to play. The opening notes of That's Amore filled the church, and the crowd went wild again. But Dean held up a hand, asking for quiet, and when he began to sing, his voice was softer, more intimate than on any record. He sang directly to Angela and Tommy, his eyes moving between them, and the lyrics that everyone knew by heart suddenly felt brand new, written just for this moment. "When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore." By the time he finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the church. Even the men were wiping their faces, pretending they had something in their eyes. "Now," Dean said, setting down the guitar, "let's get these two kids married." The ceremony proceeded in a blur. Angela floated down the aisle on her father's arm, her eyes locked on Tommy's face. He was crying openly now, not caring who saw, and when she reached him, he took her hands and whispered, "How did you do that?"
I'll tell you later, she whispered back, laughing and crying at the same time. Father Murphy performed the ceremony with extra flourish, clearly aware that this was the most important mass he'd ever conduct. When he pronounced them husband and wife, the church erupted in applause and cheer. Tommy kissed Angela like they were the only two people in the world, and for that moment, they were. As they walked back down the aisle, now husband and wife, Dean Martin stood and applauded with everyone else. When they reached him, he pulled them both into a "Congratulations, kids," he said warmly. "Now, let's go have a party." The community center had been transformed. The simple space that Angela had seen just days before was now a wonderland of flowers, lights, and elegant. Round tables were covered in white linens, and topped with elaborate centerpieces. A professional band was setting up in the corner, not just Marco with his guitar but a full ensemble with horns, drums, and a piano. A bar had been set up along one wall staffed by professional bartenders. But the most shocking thing was the people. Word had spread through the neighborhood that Dean Martin was at the Romano Chen wedding, and the guest list had somehow expanded from 80 to nearly 300. The community center was packed with people, some invited, some who had just shown up hoping to catch a glimpse of the star, but all of them welcomed with open arms. "This is insane," Tommy said, looking around in wonder. "Angela, how?" "Dean Martin called me," she admitted, unable to keep the secret any longer. "After I lost my job, he said he wanted to help, and I thought maybe he'd send flowers or something, but this," she gestured at the transformed space, "this is beyond anything I imagined." Tommy pulled her close. "You are the most amazing woman in the world, you know that?" The reception was like something out of a movie. The food was incredible. Platters of pasta, roasted meats, Chinese dumpling, spring rolls, fried rice, and Italian wedding soup. There were towers of cannoli and fortune cookies, tiramisu and almond cookies. The bartenders poured wine and cocktails with professional flair, but the real magic was Dean Martin himself. He didn't just make an appearance and leave. He stayed for the entire reception, mingling with guests, taking photos, signing autographs, and treating everyone like old friends. He danced with Angela's grandmother, who was 92 and hadn't danced in 20 years. He taught Tommy's little nephews how to do card tricks. He sang with the band, leading the crowd through Italian folk songs and American standards. At one point he pulled Angela and Tommy aside. "I want to give you your wedding present," he said, handing them an envelope. Inside was a check for $5,000, more money than they'd make in a year. "Dean, we can't accept this," Tommy said, trying to hand it back. "Sure you can," Dean said firmly. "Use it to start your life together, buy furniture, put a down payment on a house, whatever you need. And listen," he put a hand on each of their shoulders, "I grew up poor, my parents were immigrants, just like yours. They worked hard their whole lives, and never had much, but they loved each other, and they loved us kids, and that made us rich in the ways that matter. You two have that same kind of love. I can see it, so take this money and build a beautiful life together, okay?" Angela hugged him, not caring that she was wrinkling his expensive suit. "Thank you," she sobbed. "Thank you for everything." "Hey, no tears," Dean said, but his own eyes were suspiciously bright. "This is a party." As the evening wore on, Dean took the microphone one more time. "Ladies and gentlemen, I've been to a lot of parties in my life. Hollywood parties, Vegas parties, parties with presidents and kings. But I gotta tell you, this is the best party I've ever been to. You know why? Because it's real. This is real love, real community, real people coming together to celebrate something beautiful. Angela and Tommy, you two are lucky to have each other, but you're also lucky to have all these people who love you. Don't ever forget that." He raised his glass to Angela and Tom. "May your love grow stronger every day. May your home be filled with laughter and children, and may you always remember this day when a whole community came together to celebrate your love. Salute, salute." The crowd roared back, raising their glasses. The party went on until midnight. People danced until their feet hurt, ate until they couldn't eat anymore, and laughed until their faces ached. Children fell asleep on their parents' laps. Elderly couples slow danced to songs they'd loved in their youth. Strangers became friends. And through it all, Dean Martin stayed, enjoying every moment, proving that sometimes the biggest stars are the ones who shine their light on others. I'm not crying, you're crying. If this story is touching your heart, comment below and tell me about a time someone showed you unexpected kindness, and don't forget to subscribe. The final chapter is going to leave you speechless. The morning after the wedding, Angela and Tommy woke up in a hotel suite at the Beverly Hills Hotel. Another gift from Dean Martin. They lay in bed, holding hands, still trying to process what had happened. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and it will all have been a dream, Tommy said, staring at the ornate ceiling. If it's a dream, I don't want to wake up, Angela replied, squeezing his hand. They spent the morning reliving every moment, the look on everyone's faces when Dean walked into the church, the way he sang That's Amore like it was written just for them, the dancing, the food, the joy that had filled every corner of that community center. But it was the check that kept drawing their attention, $5,000. It sat on the nightstand, a piece of paper that represented a future they'd barely dared to imagine. We should use it wisely, Tommy said. Maybe a down payment on a house, like Dean suggested. And maybe, Angela added, we should find a way to pass on the kindness. That's what he would want. They didn't know it then, but that conversation would shape the rest of their lives. When they returned home 2 days later, they found their mailbox overflowing with letters, cards from wedding guests, notes from neighbors, and dozens of messages from strangers who had heard about what happened. The story had spread through the neighborhood like wildfire, and a local newspaper had picked it up. Dean Martin crashes wedding, restores faith in humanity.
But more than congratulations, the letters contained something else. Stories. People wrote about times they'd been helped by strangers, about communities coming together, about small acts of kindness that had changed their lives. One letter, from an elderly widow named Mrs. Patterson, particularly moved them. 50 years ago, she wrote, my husband and I got married with nothing but love and hope. Our neighbors threw us a reception in someone's backyard, everyone bringing what they could. It wasn't fancy, but it was the most beautiful day of my life. Your wedding reminded me of that day, and of how lucky we are when we have people who care about us. Enclosed is $20. It's not much, but I want you to have it, to start your life together. Pay it forward when you can. Angela cried reading that letter. Tommy, look at this. She doesn't even know us, and she's giving us money she probably needs herself. That's what Dean did, Tommy said thoughtfully. He didn't just give us a wedding. He reminded everyone what it means to be part of a community, to help each other. Over the next few months, Angela and Tommy settled into married life. Tommy's construction job led to better opportunities, and within a year he had started his own small contracting business. Angela, using some of Dean's gift, enrolled in design school and began specializing in wedding dresses, affordable, beautiful gowns for brides who couldn't afford designer prices. But they never forgot Mrs. Patterson's words, pay it forward when you can. 3 years after their wedding, they heard about a young couple in their neighborhood, Maria and Carlos, who were struggling to afford even a simple ceremony. Maria was pregnant, and they wanted to be married before the baby came, but they had almost nothing. Angela and Tommy looked at each other, and knew what they had to do. They organized a community effort, just like the one that had been organized for them. They provided Maria's wedding dress, one Angela had made herself. Tommy built an arbor for the ceremony. Neighbors contributed food, flowers, and music. It wasn't as elaborate as what Dean had done for them, but it was beautiful and it was given with love. At the reception held in the same community center where Angela and Tommy had celebrated, Maria pulled Angela aside, tears streaming down her face. I don't know how to thank you, she said. You've given us something we never thought we could have. You don't have to thank us, Angela said, hugging her. Just promise me that someday, when you're able, you'll help someone else. That's how we keep the magic alive. That was the beginning of what would become the Romano Chen Wedding Fund. It started informally, just Angela and Tommy helping couples they heard about through friends or church. But word spread, and soon people were reaching out to them, asking for help or offering to contribute. 5 years after their own wedding, they officially established the fund as a non-profit organization. Dean Martin, when he heard about it, became their first major donor and honorary board member. You kids took what I gave you and multiplied it, he told them over dinner at Villa Capri, the restaurant where this whole story had begun. That's exactly what I hoped would happen. Love isn't something you hoard, it's something you share. The fund grew steadily. They helped dozens of couples, then hundreds. Each wedding was different. Some were simple backyard ceremonies, others were more elaborate affairs, but all of them were filled with love and community support. Angela and Tommy had 3 children, 2 daughters and a son. They raised them with the values they'd learned: work hard, love deeply, and always help others when you can. Their children grew up attending the weddings the fund supported, learning from an early age that kindness was meant to be shared. Dean Martin remained involved with the fund until his death in 19. Once a year he would surprise one couple by showing up at their wedding, just as he had done for Angela and Tommy. The joy on those couples' faces never got old for him. "You know why I do this?" he told a reporter who asked about his involvement. "Because love is the only thing that really matters in this world. Money, fame, success, it all means nothing if you don't have love. These kids getting married, they have love. They just need a little help getting started. If I can provide that help, why wouldn't I?" The fund continued to grow, attracting support from other celebrities, inspired by Dean's example. Frank Sinatra donated. Sammy Davis Jr. showed up at a wedding in Harlem. Even Elvis Presley, before his death, contributed and surprised a couple in Memphis. But it wasn't just celebrities. Regular people donated too. $5, $10, whatever they could afford. People who had been helped by the fund came back years later to help others. The ripple effect that had started with one phone call, one crashed wedding, one act of extraordinary kindness, spread wider and wider. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Angela and Tommy threw a party at the same community center where their reception had been held. They invited everyone who had been at the original wedding, plus representatives from the hundreds of couples they'd helped over the years. Dean Martin, now in his 70s but still charming as ever, was the guest of honor. He stood to make a toast, and the room fell silent. 25 years ago, he began. "I heard about a young couple who had nothing but love and hope. I decided to crash their wedding, and it turned out to be one of the best decisions I ever made. Angela and Tommy, you've taken the kindness that was shown to you and multiplied it 1,000 times over. You've helped thousands of couples start their lives together. You've built a community of love and generosity. You've proven that one act of kindness can change the world." He raised his glass, his eyes shining with emotion. To Angela and Tommy, who taught an old crooner that the best performances aren't on stage, they're in the lives we touch and the love we share. May you have another 25 years together, and may your example continue to inspire us. Salute. The room erupted in applause and cheers. Angela and Tommy stood together, holding hands, surrounded by the community they'd built and the love they'd shared. After the party, as Dean was preparing to leave, Angela stopped him. "Dean, I've never properly thanked you for what you did. You changed our lives." Dean smiled and took her hand. "Sweetheart, you've got it backwards. You changed my life. You reminded me why I got into this business in the first place, to bring joy to people, to make them feel special, to spread a little magic around. That wedding was the best show I ever did. You got paid in something better than money," Tommy said, joining them. "You're right about that," Dean agreed. "I got to see love win. And in this crazy world, that's worth more than all the gold records and movie deals combined." He hugged them both, and as he walked to his car he turned back one more time. "Remember," he called out, "keep paying it forward. That's how we change the world. One wedding, one act of kindness, one moment of magic at a time." The Romano Chen Wedding Fund continued long after Dean's death. Angela and Tommy ran it until they were in their 70s, then passed it on to their children, who expanded it further. By 2020, the fund had helped over 15,000 couples get married. Angela passed away in 2018 at the age of 76, surrounded by her family. At her funeral, Tommy, now 80 and still deeply in love with his wife of 53 years, told the story one more time. "Angela always said that day was magic," Tommy said, his voice breaking. "And she was right. But the real magic wasn't the flowers or the food or even Dean Martin showing up. The real magic was what it taught us, that kindness multiplies, that love spreads, and that when we help each other we create something beautiful that lasts forever." "My mother believed that every act of kindness creates ripples," their daughter Rosa said, speaking after her father. "One person helps another, who helps another, who helps another. Those ripples spread out in ways we can't even imagine." Dean Martin created a ripple when he crashed my parents' wedding. My parents created more ripples by starting the fund, and now thousands of couples whose weddings we've supported are creating their own ripple. That's the legacy my mother wanted to leave. Not just a fund, but a movement of kindness. Today, the Romano Chen Wedding Fund operates in 15 cities across the United States. It's helped couples of all backgrounds, all religions. The only requirement is love and a need for help. In the fund's headquarters in Los Angeles,
There's a wall dedicated to Angela and Tommy's story. At the center is a photograph from their wedding day, Angela in her simple white dress, Tommy in his borrowed suit, and Dean Martin standing between them, his arms around both of them, all three of them laughing. Below the photograph is a plaque with Dean Martin's words, "Love is the only thing that really matters in this world." And next to that, in Angela's handwriting, copied from a letter she wrote shortly before her death, "On September 18, 1965, a famous singer crashed our wedding and changed our lives. But the real miracle wasn't what he gave us that day. The real miracle was what he taught us, that we all have the power to create magic in someone else's life. We just have to be willing to try." Every couple who receives help from the fund is asked to make one promise, that someday when they're able, they'll help someone else. Most of them do. Some come back to volunteer, others start their own charitable efforts. A few have even crashed weddings themselves, showing up with gifts and support for couples they've never met. The ripples continue to spread, because one summer day in 1965, Dean Martin heard about a couple who had no money, and instead of just feeling sorry for them, he decided to do something about it. He crashed their wedding, gave them a day of magic, and in doing so started a movement that would touch thousands of lives. That's the power of kindness, that's the power of love, that's the power of one person deciding to make a difference. And somewhere in whatever place old crooners go when they die, Dean Martin is smiling, raising a glass and singing softly to himself, "When the world seems to shine like you've had too much wine, that's a more," because he learned on that September day in 1965, that the greatest performance of all is the one that changes lives, spreads joy and reminds us all that in this sometimes dark world, magic is real, if we're willing to create it. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel for more inspiring true stories, and comment below telling me what act of kindness has changed your life. Let's keep the ripples of kindness spreading. Remember, we all have the power to create magic in someone else's life. Until next time, keep loving, keep giving, and keep believing in the power of human kindness.